On today's show, Reed Sheppard is the newest member of your Houston Rockets. Why he was the right choice for the Rockets at pick number 3. Comments from general manager Rafael Stone after the first round of the draft. Other NBA draft night news and so much more. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
With the third pick in the 2024 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Reed Sheppard from the University of Kentucky.
Yeah, Reed Sheppard is now a member of the Houston Rockets. What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the best way you can help our show out, is to comment anything below. Just swing by, say, go Rockets. You know what? Better yet, on today's episode, swing by, say, go Reed Sheppard. There we go. That's the one. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. Round 1 of the NBA draft has concluded. It's so weird that they've got it split into 2 nights now. And the Houston Rockets, despite all the rumors, all the smoke screens, more on that in just a moment, all the trade hypotheticals, all the posturing, they got their guy in Reed Sheppard, who was apparently their guy the whole way through at pick number 3. I could not be more excited about this selection for the Houston Rockets. In the days leading up to the draft, there was a lot of reporting, a lot of rumors, a lot of smoke screens being thrown around, but it appears that Reed Sheppard was actually the Rockets' top target the whole way through the draft cycle. That they had him ranked, and these are words straight from the mouth of general manager Rafael Stone, they had him ranked far and above the number 1 guy on their draft board. They think he is the number 1 prospect in this draft by a wide margin, and it's incredibly exciting thinking about what they're adding to this roster. A shooter who managed to shoot 52% from beyond the arc this past season with Kentucky on about 4.5 attempts per game. Really solid, really solid playmaker, solid defender. And I'm going to get more into the details about why I think this was the right pick for the Rockets. If you missed it during our pre-draft evaluation process, going through all the different prospects, we have a Reed Sheppard breakdown episode where we spoke exclusively about him, talking about his strengths, his weaknesses, his NBA comps, his potential fit with the Rockets. Go revisit that. It's on the just scroll back in the podcast feed. It's on the YouTube page. Go check it out with our weekly co-host Madison Moore. Honestly, Reed to me seemed like the perfect fit, right? You look at this Houston Rockets team, you look at what their biggest weakness was this past season and some of the glaring holes in this Rockets roster, and that was a clear lack of outside shooting. And Reed Sheppard, best shooter in the draft, point blank, period. So addressing one major need there. He's also a very capable playmaker and ball handler, right? He is a guy that can step in and probably from day one, at least play anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes of backup point guard a night behind Fred VanVleet. And that gives the Rockets now a tertiary ball handler, somebody outside of Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, who you can put the ball in his hands and run the offense and expect him to do so pretty well, actually. I mean, you look at what he did at Kentucky. Yeah, he played a bit off ball and he's capable of playing with the ball in his hands or without it. That's the beauty of his game, is he's more than capable as a primary initiator. You can put the ball in his hands. He understands how to leverage his shooting gravity to open up opportunities for his teammates or even for himself at times. So this is, to me, this was this pick that was screaming in our face saying this makes the most sense for the Rockets. And at the end of the day, you've also got different draft analysts like Kevin O'Connor had Reed Sheppard number 1 on his draft board by the end of his evaluation process. Kevin Pelton, who is a gigantic draft analytics guru, has Reed Sheppard number 1 by a wide margin on his board, with all the analytics backings there. And so I want to commend the Houston Rockets front office for making this selection. It feels like this is going to be a fantastic addition to the Houston Rockets young core. Reed Sheppard provides a skill set that is not already currently found amongst the Rockets young core 6. And I really did. I had my doubts about the Rockets and their willingness to select him, given some of his, the couple knocks on Reed Sheppard, right? He's a bit, quote unquote, undersized. The measurables, the physicals don't exactly jump off the page at you. And historically, a lot of the guys that we've seen this Houston Rockets front office draft, especially at the top of the draft, mind you, like with their top selections, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Amin Thompson, these guys, specifically Jalen and Amin, and then also Cam Whitmore, tend to be these like athletic phenoms, right? Like 99th percentile athletes. And that's not who Reed Sheppard is. Now, General Manager Rafael Stone did say that he's an underrated athlete. And so maybe that's the new version of calling somebody sneaky athletic here in today's NBA. We know that he posted the insane vertical at the NBA Draft Combine, although he did talk about it in an interview after the fact, saying that he kind of alligator armed it and he cheated a little bit to get a couple extra inches on his vertical. But there's so much to unpack here, and just kind of, this is just the immediate reaction, the aftermath of this. I couldn't be more excited. Reed did speak a little bit after being selected about coming to the Houston Rockets and how excited he is and the ability to learn. He mentioned Fred VanVleet multiple times. And I think that already speaks to who he is as a player and his understanding of his role in this team, his desire to learn, to be coached up, to grow as an NBA player, and understanding that Fred VanVleet is the guy in front of him in the pecking order, a guy that he can learn a lot from. And again, there are a lot of similarities across their games from Fred VanVleet to Reed Sheppard. And at the end of the day, if the Rockets are drafting Reed Sheppard as a potential down the line Fred VanVleet replacement, look, Fred has had a ton of success in his NBA career as an undersized guard, standing at a towering 6 feet tall. Reed Sheppard is not undersized when compared to Fred VanVleet. So for everything that he brings to the table, the shooting, the playmaking, the defense, he's a dog. Like he is that kind of player. And shout out to both Tari, Eason, and Jalen Green, who made Reed Sheppard feel immediately welcome to the Houston Rockets. Jalen Green in Barclays Center in New York, in Brooklyn, for draft night, was there to support his longtime good friend, AJ Johnson, who was drafted, but also being there and being able to greet Reed Sheppard and congratulate him on joining the team. That was I'm sure an exciting moment for Reed, a great moment for those two to share. And then Tari Eason, who immediately took to social media, took to Twitter to say Demon home, went on IG Live and was hyping up Reed Sheppard, was welcoming him to the Houston Rockets. So you can always count on Tari Eason to make a spectacle of himself on social media. But with that, I want to get into some more of the commentary from General Manager Rafael Stone, as well as the smoke screens and why there was all this reporting about Donovan Clingan, why the Rockets ultimately decided to go with Reed Sheppard, why he was the perfect pick for this team, as well as some of the other NBA draft night news. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Look, I don't know about you, My least favorite thing when I'm buying tickets to any event, right? Could be to a sporting event, could be to a concert, theater, whatever, is you're going through the ticket buying process. You get to the very end, and then suddenly they price gouge you by hitting you with a million, digital handling fees and service fees and digital ticket charges and all that. It's garbage. I hate it. You don't get any of that with Game Time. They give you their all-in price up front, so you know exactly how much you're paying, regardless of what tickets you're purchasing or when you're buying them. Doesn't matter. You know exactly how much you're going to spend. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, continuing to navigate our reaction to Reed Sheppard being drafted by the Houston Rockets. Let's get to some comments from Rafael Stone. I already shared a few comments that he had in his post-draft media availability, but I got the chance to ask him about some of the pre-draft reporting about the Rockets' interest in Donovan Clingan, and I thought his answer was actually pretty illuminating. So let's run that back right now. Some reporting prior to the draft about the team's possible interest in UConn's Donovan Clingan. So when both Clingan and Reed Sheppard were on the board at 3, what considerations did you guys have internally, and what kind of made Sheppard the right pick for your organization?
Yeah, we had Sheppard very, very high. So I think lots of players, including Donovan, were going to be very successful. But yeah, I mean, our evaluation was that Reed was, Reed has a very special skill set that gives him a chance. It's definitely not certainty, but gives him a chance to be special in the NBA in a way we thought was unique in this draft.
Okay, so general manager Rafael Stone kind of highlighting there a very political response, if you will, to not downplay the talent of Donovan Clingan or any of the other prospects in the draft. Now, I will say on the Reed Sheppard angle of his answer, right, highlighting the fact that he believes Reed has a very specific, special skill set that was unique in this draft, and I do think that probably largely lends itself again to the analytics angle when you look at the fact that he is a lights out shooter, the way that he impacts the game defensively, the plays that he makes on the defensive side of the ball, his ability to read opposing offenses, understanding where to be, playing passing lanes. He's kind of a very similar defensive playmaker in the same light of a Tari Eason type, right? So he's got that going for him. The playmaking part of his game is maybe a little bit underrated, right? Again, at Kentucky, he wasn't the exclusive, ball in his hands 24/7 playmaker. He did play off ball quite a bit, but I do think that the Rockets kind of see the makings of a future starting point guard there with Reed Sheppard. So again, I'm really happy that they went with him as their selection. Now, I will say, the reason I asked this question is, and I've already been getting so much flack. Everybody's saying like, "Oh my God, you got completely duped, Gatlin. They faked you out. It was never going to be Donovan Mitchell." Well, yeah, of course. Like, first off, I want to commend the Houston Rockets front office, because it wasn't just me, guys. They had Adrian Wojnarowski, they had Kelly Iko, they had Brian Windhorst, they had other draft analysts out there. They hoodwinked a lot of people by gassing up their interest in Donovan Clingan. Now, maybe that was just a leveraging tactic to try and drive up the price of the 3rd overall pick. And if they got like some crazy Godfather offer from like the Memphis Grizzlies or something, then yeah, maybe they would have taken Clingan number 3, traded him down to whatever team wanted to, give up a king's ransom for their guy in Donovan Clingan, who ultimately went at 7 to the Blazers. But I think it was actually more so that in the past, specifically the 2022 draft with Paolo Banchero, the Rockets were horrible about hiding their interest in Paolo Banchero, right? They were not shy, and they were like, "Oh, that's our guy." I mean, they didn't come right out and say it, but all signs indicated and pointed towards the fact that the Rockets were ready for Paolo Banchero to become a Houston Rocket. And it wasn't until a couple days before the draft when the Vegas lines and the odds started to shift, and then suddenly Paolo goes number 1 overall to the Orlando Magic, and the Rockets, I mean, they got sniped, right? Like, and then they got Jabari Smith Jr., which worked out for me. I'm still very incredibly high on Jabari Smith Jr.'s future potential, but as it stands right now, Paolo Banchero is the significantly better player. And at least as far as their evaluation process, I'm sure that matched what they saw internally. So I think this was them having learned their lesson from that draft in particular to not start championing their pick and to be a little bit more covert about it, to be a little bit more discreet in who they were planning on selecting. And in fact, not even just being discreet about it, but actually applying a lot of misdirection and, again, smoke screens out there to get big name reporters, like guys that are much bigger than just the local beat guys here in Houston, right? They had guys on the national level, Wojnarowski and many other NBA draft analysts who were convinced that Donovan Clingan was going to be the pick for the Houston Rockets at number 3. So again, I want to commend the Rockets front office for their level of misdirection when it came to this draft, in the fact that, again, Stone was very upfront and transparent in his post-draft availability, highlighting that Reed Sheppard was their guy all the way through. Just envisioning and thinking about how he complements the other pieces of the Rockets' young core, right? Thinking about him in a backcourt with either Jalen Green or Amin Thompson or Cam Whitmore, thinking about how he's able to feed those guys, thinking about the pressure that he takes off these guys. Think about all the double teams that we saw last season for Alperen and Sengun throughout a majority of the season, and then once Alp went down and Jalen Green went into his supernova performance to close out the year, think about all the doubles that both of those guys saw, and this the lack of shooting that was around them. And now you're able to add a guy like Reed Sheppard, who's just a flat-out knockdown three-point shooter. I mean, I think there's a very legitimate possibility. The Rockets had a really strong 9-man rotation already, and there were going to be some question marks about who gets what minutes and how do you factor in another draft pick into what they're trying to do. I think there's a very realistic possibility that Reed Sheppard gets minutes early in the season, potentially like opening night minutes. He's just that good right out of the gate. He's so polished. He's already got an incredibly high floor. And again, I think that he answers a lot of questions for this Rockets team. The shooting, the ball handling. He's probably going to be the Rockets' backup point guard right out of the gate. And so you look at their depth chart, right? The starting lineup: Fred, Jalen, Dillon, Jabari, Sengun, and then your backups, your second stringers. You've got Reed Sheppard, Cam Whitmore, Amin Thompson, Tari, Eason, and Steven Adams. That's an incredible 10-man lineup for the Rockets to be able to trot out next season. And that's not even including the other fringe pieces that they have, like Jock, Landale, Jae'Sean Tate, other guys who may or may not, see some spot minutes here and there, some injury insurance type guys, if you will. Jeff Green, bringing him back into the fold, not having to play the full-time backup 5 position next season. I'm sure he's very much looking forward to not having to do that this next go around. Again, I think that this pick just made so much sense, and seeing Rockets fans' collective reactions to this pick was incredibly exciting. I know that there were rumors out there, again, about the Rockets potentially trading down with the Charlotte Hornets or the Memphis Grizzlies, and ultimately none of those deals came to fruition. Sometimes the obvious choice, the obvious answer is just to take the simplest, easiest path in front of you, and that was this one, where Reed Sheppard has a very strong chance to walk away as the best player from this draft class. And for the Rockets to be able to get him at pick number 3, absolutely amazing. I will say one of the other comments that Rafael Stone had when addressing the media after the draft, he was asked about the Brooklyn Nets trade and trading the Nets picks back to Brooklyn and receiving the Suns picks. Want to share his thoughts on that dynamic here in just one moment, as well as additional thoughts on the rest of the NBA draft night news. Some interesting trades, some other moves being made on draft night. We're going to unpack all that here in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's hear what Rafael Stone had to say about the trade with the Brooklyn Nets receiving back those Phoenix Suns draft picks.
Can you discuss what was the motivation behind the trade last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, mostly we thought it was a good deal. I think that we were able to turn a future first round pick and a future first round swap into two future first round picks and two future first round swaps. And, and I think it made sense. It diversified our kind of portfolio of picks going out. It pushed them out a little bit, which is really good for us. We're a very young team right now. And so pushing those picks out and having some draft picks a little further out, we think makes sense, both in terms of our ability to trade those picks, but also in terms of just picking them so that we don't have quite as many guys in their first, second, and third year at the same time. And we just thought it was great value. So for us, we've been in discussions with Brooklyn for a long time, for months. And it was the culmination of lots and lots of talks. And Sean's a good guy and he's great to work with. And I'm glad it worked out. And obviously they were able to execute. Our deal with them allowed them to then go and do a very, very large deal, which I think they feel really good about. So I think, it's kind of a win-win in this.
All right, a lot to unpack from Stone's answer there, addressing the trade with the Brooklyn Nets. First and foremost, I want to highlight here, because there was a lot of pushback that myself, the Podfather, our weekly co-host Ben Dubose received, and many others received, from even suggesting the fact that the Houston Rockets were only able to do this trade, or let me backtrack for a second, that the Nets were only able to deal Mikal Bridges to the Knicks for the massive trade package that they did receive because the Rockets had this trade in place. Rafael basically alluded to and all but flat out confirmed in that statement that the reason Sean Marks and the Nets were able to make that trade was because they had already agreed to this trade behind the scenes to swap those picks back, right? The Nets had decided on their path, which was they wanted to tank, they wanted to bottom out, and they were only able to do that. They were only able to make that decision because they were able to reclaim their 2025 and 2026 draft picks from the Houston Rockets. So wanted to point that out because there was a lot of pushback received, again, from the people suggesting that was the reason for the trade, or that was the only reason the trade happened the way that it did. A lot of Rockets fans are still very upset, saying, well, why would you trade back the Nets picks? They were going to be so good because they finally traded Mikal Bridges. They wouldn't have traded Mikal Bridges if they didn't get this trade from the Rockets first. So let's dead that conversation now, because that's as much evidence as we're going to get to just cement that and call it a day. So anyways, I agree with Stone's reasoning here about, first off, it's, you get a higher quantity of draft picks overall. You're also inadvertently, you've increased the value tremendously of that 2027 pick swap with the Nets, because again, they're going to bottom out. They're going to be bad for a couple years, guaranteed. The chances of them being good by year 3 of their rebuild, very, very slim to none, right? Look, the Rockets in year 3 of their rebuild, they still churned out a, 4th overall pick for Amin Thompson, right? So there's a very, very strong possibility that 2027 net swap is off the charts, ridiculously valuable down the line, depending on where the Nets are at in that stage of the rebuilding process. Now, his other comments about the age angle, right, of pushing those draft picks further out because this team's incredibly young, that's one of the reasons that I had my doubts about them wanting to add a 7th young prospect to this roster. Now, obviously, they were just completely blown away by Reed Sheppard, and they wanted him the whole way through the draft process, and I'm glad they got him. But it does seem now that with the core 7 now locked in and intact, the Rockets are now going to be prioritizing, pushing those picks further out, not having, this immediate pipeline of youth, because having 7 players who are all 23 and under, that's a really young roster. So understandably, right, you need to be able to balance out all the youth on the roster with stabilizing veteran forces. And part of that is, Jalen and Sengun are now entering year 4. They're getting older. Jabari, Tari, same thing. So as the young core gets older, then it becomes less and less of a problem. So I do think pushing those picks further out does help in that fact. And it gives time for the young core to continue growing and developing with one another. And I do think from just a tradability perspective, having those assets further out means that you have a little bit more time to decide what you want to do with them. Again, whether it means picking them, like Stone already said, or trading them down the line. You have a lot more flexibility at the end of the day. So I appreciated his kind of transparency when discussing that trade, and he even highlighted that these talks had been ongoing for months, right? These are the talks that Jonathan Fagan of the Houston Chronicle originally reported on back at the trade deadline for the Houston Rockets. So this was a thing where at the end of the day, I'm glad the Rockets were able to get this done because the flip side of this scenario in an alternate universe somewhere, the Nets don't do this trade with the Rockets, and instead they make a really boneheaded trade and they cash in all those Suns picks on, I don't know, somebody like Donovan Mitchell or Lauri Markkanen or Brandon Ingram, and they have some like pseudo kind of like just above 500 team that's going to be winning like 40 to 45 games every season in the Eastern Conference, clocking in as like the 7th or 8th seed, and completely ruining the value of the Nets picks that the Rockets did own. So I'd been championing this case for a very, very long time that the Rockets need to just figure out a way to cash in on those Nets picks, either by trading them back to Brooklyn or trading them to a different organization and getting some value back for them while they still had value. So I'm very happy that they finally made this trade. I think it makes a ton of sense, and I really do agree wholeheartedly with the mentality towards those steps that the Rockets took in that regard. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to highlight here, just looking at the rest of the NBA draft order and kind of some of the things that took place, some of the names that were taken across the board. I will highlight here that the decision by, first off, very weird decision by the San Antonio Spurs to trade the 8th overall selection. I did think that one was a little crazy. Especially because they're a team that's not, I won't say devoid of young talent, but they're in stage 1 of the rebuild. Like, why wouldn't you want more young talent on your roster? Trading that pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves was an interesting move. I think that what the T-Wolves did, though, by acquiring that pick and then subsequently being able to draft Rob Dillingham, really, really impressive use of kind of like, I want to say like circumventing like cap logistics, because the way that teams are now being penalized if you're like a second apron team and not being able to basically being really financially restricted kind of across the board, the T-Wolves essentially added a player at, you know, whatever he's going to be making at that, you know, $5 million, $6 million, whatever. They would not have been able to add a player at that price point outside of the draft, but because draft rights, draft prospects, whatever, when you trade the rights to a prospect or the rights to a pick, there is no money involved. It's treated as a $0 transaction. So the T-Wolves, you know, gave up a couple of their future picks. The Spurs walk away with, you know, some extra draft capital in the bank further down the line. And now the T-Wolves get to add a player in Rob Dillingham who absolutely, addresses a huge need of theirs, which is, you know, just offensively, right? They were, you know, they needed a little bit more offensive potency in the postseason, right? So thinking about, you know, a backcourt of Rob Dillingham and Anthony Edwards, like, oh my God, that talk about electric, insane, high scoring, high octane basketball being played with those two. I love that move for the Timberwolves. And again, I think it's really a really creative use of circumventing the CBA, maybe not circumventing the CBA, but just creative uses of the CBA in order to maximize your roster's potential. So I wanted to highlight that there. Elsewhere across the draft, I mean, Zachary Risacher goes number 1 to the Hawks, Alex Sarr number 2 to the Wizards. Both of those were kind of expected. There was a lot of smoke about Donovan Clingan maybe going number 1 to the Hawks. Obviously, that didn't fall through. Look, Donovan Clingan fell really far. I did not expect him to go all the way down at 7 to the Portland Trailblazers. Zach Edey was a huge surprise at 9 to the Grizzlies. You even had like Kevin O'Connor was even poking fun at Chris Vernon, his fellow like Ringer and podcast co-host over on the Twitter on Twitter, because like Chris Vernon did not want Zach Edey in a Grizzlies jersey, and honestly that was an insane reach and arguably a really bad choice by the Grizzlies. Now we'll see how that plays out, but I do not think Zach Edey was worth a top 10 pick in this draft. That one was a little bit crazy. Nikola Topic to the OKC Thunder at pick 12 with, unfortunately, the Rockets pick by way of the Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook trade from a few years back. It sucks, but Topic is going to be the Thunder's version of Michael Porter Jr. And I tweeted this during the draft, and I got so much flack for it because everybody was like, Topic can't shoot. What are you talking about? I meant it from the perspective of MPJ had the concerns with his injury history going into the draft, and the Nuggets were able to scoop him up at the end of the lottery, middle of the first round, and then he turned into, one of their best three players on their championship team, right? On a title team. Topic, I don't know if he's going to have like that level of impact for the Thunder, but the fact that Topic did have what was it? I think it was an ACL injury or something. Whatever injury Topic had that kind of like hurt his draft stock considerably, for the Thunder to be able to scoop him up at pick 12, it's just Sam Presti lucks out again. Like, he can't keep getting away with this. I feel like there was a world where if Cody Williams had made it to pick 12, maybe that would have been the pick for the Thunder instead. Ultimately, they go with Topic. I think that's gonna be a pick that pays massive dividends for the Thunder, and a young, exciting team, one of the best teams in the NBA already, gets yet another young, exciting prospect to grow and develop. And again, whether he works out or not, whether the injury concerns, whether the injury is substantial, they're able to take that kind of a swing because they already have a bona fide, incredibly talented roster. So if Topic doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. If he does work out and if he hits in a big way, then the Thunder just got, arguably a top 5 talent in the draft at pick number 12. So that one's a little bit frustrating. Some of the other ones down the board, Dalton Connect sliding all the way to 17 and the Lakers being able to scoop him up. My God, just an absolute stroke of luck for LA. A team that needs shooting around LeBron and Anthony Davis. They get one of the best shooters in the draft. Not quite as good as Reed Sheppard, mind you, but one of the best shooters in the draft nonetheless. A guy that I was incredibly high on and that I would have loved to see the Rockets trade back and get, if depending on the other value that they would have also gotten from a trade down. Great pickup for the Lakers. I'm trying to see if there was anybody else here in the first round that kind of surprised. Any other deals that jump out? Not particularly. Just wanted to highlight. The other one that I wanted to say, Stephon Castle at number 4 to the Spurs, man. That one hurts, especially because of how excited I was in the pre-draft process, looking at Stephon Castle and seeing what he could do. And I think he's going to have a lot of success in San Antonio, and having to deal with Wemby and Castle right down I-10 for the next decade plus. I hate it. I hate it already. But watching the duels between Stephon Castle and Reed Sheppard are going to be incredible. Cannot wait to see those two match up head to head. Can't wait to see what Reed Sheppard does in Las Vegas Summer League. That's going to be a ton of fun. I was on the fence about attending Summer League this year, depending on what the Rockets did with their draft pick. Now it's almost a guarantee that I'm going to have to be there in person for the 4th year in a row for Vegas Summer League. But with that, I think that's going to conclude our episode today. I'm curious your thoughts. How are you feeling about the Reed Sheppard pick for the Houston Rockets? Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. How did you feel about the rest of the NBA draft? What are some of the standout moments or moves that other teams made that you were impressed by or confused by at the end of the day? Let us know in those YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review helps us out a ton. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.